The wind-swept plains of southern Texas held stories etched into every grain of sand, every weathered fence post, and every sun-bleached rock. In the small border town of Hidalgo, where the landscape stretched endlessly between Mexico and the United States, a young Maria Rodriguez discovered the first whispers of her destiny. Her family's modest home stood as a testament to generations of hard work and quiet resilience. The Rodriguez household was a microcosm of border life, a delicate balance of two cultures, two languages, and endless dreams. Her father, Carlos Rodriguez, was a mechanic whose hands told stories of endless labor, thick, calloused fingers that could coax life back into the most stubborn engines, yet seemed unable to understand his daughter's wild aspirations. Maria's mother, Helena, was a school teacher with eyes that held the wisdom of generations. She understood something her husband did not, that dreams were not confined by gender, geography, or expectation. Every night, after the dinner dishes were cleared, and her younger brothers had been tucked into bed, Elena would sit with Maria, sharing stories of remarkable women who had defied the odds. It was during one of these evenings that Maria first heard about Amelia Earhart, the story of the pioneering aviator who disappeared while attempting to circumnavigate the globe. Captured the young girl's imagination. Elena's voice would drop to a reverent whisper, describing how Earhart had challenged the world's perception of what a woman could achieve. Maria would sit, transfixed, her dark eyes reflecting an inner fire that seemed to burn brighter with each word. The local airport was more of a dusty airstrip than a proper facility. Most locals saw it as nothing more than a patch of flat ground where small planes occasionally landed or took off. But for Maria, it was a portal to another world. Every chance she got, she would bike the 3 miles from her family's home, hiding behind a weathered fence, watching planes dance across the sky. Her grandmother, Isabella, a woman who had survived the harsh realities of immigration, raised 3 children, and worked multiple jobs, became her unexpected ally. Where Carlos saw impractical dreams, Isabella saw potential. She would slip Maria books about aviation, military history, and remarkable women who had carved their paths through seemingly impossible terrain. Mia, Isabella would say, her voice a mixture of wisdom and mischief, the sky doesn't care about the stories people tell you. The sky only cares about your courage. School was both a challenge and an opportunity for Maria. She was brilliant. Not just smart, but the kind of intelligent that made teachers both proud and slightly uncomfortable. Mathematics came to her like breathing. Physics was a playground of possibilities. While other girls talked about boys and fashion, Maria calculated wind speeds, studied aerodynamics, and drew intricate diagrams of aircraft in the margins of her notebooks. Her teachers recognized her potential, even if they didn't quite know what to do with it. Mr. Thompson, her physics teacher, was the first adult outside her family to truly encourage her dreams. "You have a mind that's built for complex systems," he would tell her. "Most people see a plane and think of transportation. You see a plane and understand the complex dance of physics that keeps it in the air. But dreams come with a price, and Maria's path was lined with obstacles. Her father's traditional views meant constant arguments. "Pilots are men," Carlos would say, his voice a mixture of love and frustration. "Your job is to get married, have children, support a family." Maria would listen, respectful but unbroken, her silence a quiet rebellion. The local community was a tapestry of cultural expectations and limitations. In Hidalgo, girls were expected to follow predictable paths, become teachers, nurses, or eventually wives and mothers. Maria's ambition stood out like a beacon, drawing both admiration and skepticism. Her saving grace was her family's complex heritage. Being of Mexican-American descent meant understanding navigation, not just of geographical spaces, but of cultural landscapes. Maria learned early that survival meant adaptability, resilience, and an unbreakable spirit. Weekends became her training ground. While other teenagers went to movies or hung out at local diners, Maria would work odd jobs to save money for flying lessons. She mowed lawns, helped at her father's mechanic shop, tutored younger students in math and science. Every dollar was a step closer to the sky. Her first actual flying lesson came as a surprise, a gift from her grandmother Isabella. On her 16th birthday, instead of the traditional quinceañera that most girls in her community celebrated, Isabella had arranged for Maria to take an introductory flight lesson. The moment Maria lifted off the ground, the world transformed. The limitations of Earth fell away, replaced by an infinite canvas of possibility. She wasn't just flying, she was becoming something more than anyone had ever imagined she could be. That first flight was more than a lesson. It was a declaration of independence, a statement etched against the vast Texas sky. Maria Rodriguez was going to fly, not because anyone believed she could, but because she knew, deep in her bones, that she was meant to. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a journey that would redefine what it meant to be a fighter pilot, a woman, an American. The sky was calling, and Maria Rodriguez was ready to answer. The United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs stood as a monument to precision, discipline, and excellence. Its granite walls and meticulously maintained grounds seemed to whisper challenges to every cadet who walked through its gates. For Maria Rodriguez, those gates represented both a dream and a battlefield. Her first day was a symphony of controlled chaos. Cadets moved with military precision, their uniforms crisp, their movements calculated. Maria stood out, not just because she was one of the few women in her class, but because of an intensity that seemed to radiate from her very core. Her dark eyes scanned the environment with a hawk-like focus, taking in every detail, every potential challenge. The initial weeks were designed to break spirits. Physical training pushed cadets beyond their perceived limits. Endless push-ups, grueling runs, obstacle courses that seemed to defy human endurance. While many cadets struggled, Maria found a rhythm. Her years of determination, her work ethic learned from her father's mechanic shop, her mental toughness cultivated in the young Texas borderlands, all of these became her secret weapons. Cadet life was more than physical challenges. It was a complex social ecosystem where every interaction was a test. The male cadets, many from privileged backgrounds, initially viewed Maria with a mixture of skepticism and barely concealed hostility. Whispers followed her. "She's only here because of diversity quotas," some would mutter. Others were more direct, creating obstacles both subtle and overt. Major Stephen Richardson, one of the senior instructors, became an unexpected crucible in her journey. A decorated fighter pilot with decades of experience, he was old school in every sense, skeptical of women in combat roles, particularly in fighter pilot training. Their first encounter was a masterclass in barely concealed tension. Cadet Rodriguez, he would bark during tactical strategy sessions. Explain how you would handle a multi-aircraft engagement in contested airspace. His tone wasn't just a question. It was a challenge, a dare to prove she belonged. Maria never flinched. Her responses were technical, precise, backed by hours of independent study and a natural tactical brilliance that went beyond textbook knowledge. She didn't just answer questions, she dismantled assumptions. The academic challenges were equally intense. Advanced aerodynamics, complex mathematics, aviation physics. Each course was designed to separate those who could from those who couldn't. Maria didn't just keep up, she excelled. Her notebooks were works of art, intricate diagrams, complex calculations, insights that went beyond standard curriculum. Her roommate, Sarah Chun, became her unexpected ally. A computer science specialist with her own set of challenges, Sarah understood the unspoken struggles of being a minority in a traditionally homogeneous environment. They formed a support system, sharing late-night study sessions, pushing each other to exceed expectations. Physical training took on mythic proportions. The flight simulation programs were brutal, designed to test not just technical skills, but psychological resilience. Scenarios would throw impossible challenges, multiple aircraft threats, complex terrain, communication breakdowns. Where other cadets would falter, Maria found her flow. One particular simulation became legendary among her instructors. A scenario that had previously defeated every cadet in her class. A complex multi-threat environment requiring split-second decision-making. Maria didn't just complete the mission. She did so with a level of tactical creativity that left her instructors speechless. Major Richardson, watching the simulation, felt something shift in his long-held beliefs. The way Maria navigated impossible scenarios wasn't about gender. It was about pure, unadulterated skill. But the path wasn't without personal cost. The constant pressure, the need to be twice as good to be considered half as capable, took its toll. Nights were often spent in quiet reflection, messages home carefully crafted to not worry her family, to not show the moments of doubt that inevitably crept in. Her grandmother's words became her mantra. The sky doesn't care about the stories people tell you. The sky only cares about your courage. Cultural dynamics added another layer of complexity. As a Mexican-American woman in a traditionally white, male-dominated field, Maria carried the hopes and expectations of her community. Every achievement was not just personal. It was a statement, a breakthrough. The turning point came during a critical leadership assessment. A complex scenario that tested not just technical skills, but team dynamics, strategic thinking, and psychological resilience. Cadets were placed in high-stress environments, forced to make rapid decisions that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Maria's approach was revolutionary. Where others saw individual challenges, she saw interconnected systems. Her leadership style wasn't about domination, but about creating a cohesive unit that could adapt, overcome, and excel. By her final year, the whispers had changed. Rodriguez is going to be something special, instructors would say. Major Richardson, once her most vocal critic, became her strongest advocate. Her graduation was more than a personal achievement. It was a statement, a declaration that talent, determination, and skill knew no gender, no racial boundaries. As she received her wings, Maria thought of her family back in Hidalgo, of her father, who had slowly come to understand her dreams, of her mother, who had always believed, of her grandmother, whose stories of courage had planted the first seeds. Of her journey, the sky was no longer a distant dream. It was her domain. The Middle Eastern desert stretched out like an endless canvas of heat and tension. Dust devils danced across the landscape, a visual metaphor for the volatile political climate that defined the region. For Maria Rodriguez, this was no longer a training ground. This was her reality. Her first real deployment came with a weight of expectations that would have crushed a lesser spirit. The 387th Tactical Fighter Squadron was known for its precision, its legendary pilots, and its unforgiving standards. Maria was the first female pilot to be fully integrated into the unit, a fact that hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. The base was a world unto itself. Modern technological marvels mixed with the timeless landscape of sand and sky. Advanced fighter jets sat ready, their sleek forms a stark contrast to the rugged terrain. Sophisticated radar systems, communication networks, and cutting-edge weaponry created a complex ecosystem of military preparedness. Maria's first briefing was a masterclass in military precision. Intelligence reports painted a complex picture of regional tensions, Insurgent movements, strategic positioning, potential threat vectors. The briefing room was alive with holographic displays and real-time data streams. Where others saw complexity, Maria saw patterns. Her squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel Jack Harriman, was a veteran of multiple conflicts. 45 years old, with eyes that had seen more than most would in several lifetimes, he approached Maria with a mixture of skepticism and professional curiosity. Their first interaction was a delicate dance of professional respect and unspoken challenges. Rodriguez, he would say during mission preparations, his voice a gravelly reminder of years spent in the air. Show me you understand the difference between academy simulations and real-world engagement. And she did. Her first reconnaissance mission became the stuff of squadron legend. A complex flight path over disputed territory, requiring absolute precision and split-second decision-making. Where other pilots might have followed standard protocols, Maria found innovative approaches that maximized mission effectiveness while minimizing potential risks. During one particularly challenging mission, she detected anomalies in enemy movement patterns that most would have overlooked. A series of seemingly random vehicle movements that, to her analytical mind, suggested a coordinated effort. Her communication to base led to the prevention of a potential ambush of a forward operating unit. The technological ecosystem of modern warfare became her playground. Maria wasn't just a pilot, she was a systems thinker. Advanced avionics, complex communication networks, real-time data analysis. She processed information at a speed that seemed almost superhuman. Her fellow pilots began to see her not as a diversity quota, but as a critical asset. Personal challenges were constant. The military culture, despite progressive changes, still carried deep-rooted traditions of awe. Masculinity, casual comments, subtle exclusions, moments of unspoken tension. Maria navigated these with a combination of professional excellence and personal resilience. Her relationship with her fellow pilots evolved rapidly. Initial skepticism gave way to respect and to a genuine appreciation of her skills. During debriefings, her insights were sought after. Her ability to analyze complex scenarios went beyond traditional tactical thinking. One particular mission changed everything. A high-risk reconnaissance over a region known for its unpredictable and dangerous anti-aircraft capabilities. Most pilots would approach with maximum caution. Maria saw it as a complex problem to be solved. Her approach was revolutionary. Using a combination of advanced electronic warfare techniques and innovative flight patterns, she managed to gather critical intelligence with minimal risk. The data she collected provided unprecedented insights into insurgent movement patterns. Lieutenant Colonel Harriman called her into his office after the mission. The walls were adorned with mission photos, unit commendations, a visual history of military achievement. His approach was direct, professional. "Rodriguez," he began, "your last mission wasn't just successful. It was a game changer. The military is a complex organism, part technological marvel, part human network. Reputation is currency, and Maria was rapidly becoming a valuable asset. Her fellow pilots began to see her not as a woman in a man's world, but as the exceptional pilot who happened to be a woman. Cultural dynamics added another layer of complexity. As a Mexican-American woman in a critical military role, Maria represented more than just herself. She carried the hopes and expectations of multiple communities, her family in Hidalgo, women aspiring to break barriers, her cultural heritage. Her communication skills became as critical as her flying abilities. In a region defined by complex cultural interactions, Maria's ability to understand nuanced communication, linguistic and non-linguistic, became a strategic asset. She wasn't just flying missions. She was building bridges of understanding. Technology became an extension of her capabilities. Advanced fighter jets were no longer just machines. They were complex systems that she could read like others read. Books. Every vibration, every slight deviation in performance told a story. Her maintenance reports were works of analytical art, providing insights that went beyond standard protocols. By the end of her first deployment, Maria Rodriguez was no longer just another pilot. She had become a strategic asset, a problem solver, a critical thinker who happened to fly some of the most advanced aircraft in the world. The sky was no longer just a battlefield. It was her domain, a three-dimensional chessboard where she was rapidly becoming a grandmaster. The Situation Room was a cathedral of controlled tension. Massive screens displayed a complex tapestry of geopolitical information, satellite imagery, communication intercepts, real-time troop movements. The air was thick with the weight of potential consequences, each moment a delicate balance between strategic decision-making and human survival. General Thomas Garrett sat at the center of this technological nerve center. 57 years old, with a career that had seen the transformation of modern warfare, he was a living encyclopedia of military strategy. His reputation was legendary, a tactician who had navigated some of the most complex military operations of the past 3 decades. The mission had begun as a routine intelligence-gathering operation in a region that had become a powder keg of international tensions. What started as a standard reconnaissance mission had transformed into a nightmare scenario that threatened to escalate into a full-scale international incident. General Garrett had been leading a critical diplomatic mission, attempting to negotiate a delicate peace process in one of the most volatile regions of the world. Intelligence suggested a complex network of insurgent groups had been monitoring the mission, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The initial attack came without warning. A coordinated assault that demonstrated a level of tactical sophistication that shocked even the most experienced military analysts. Communication lines were severed, support teams were cut off, and the general found himself in an increasingly desperate situation. Maria Rodriguez was called into a classified briefing that would change everything. The room was a microcosm of military precision, senior officers, intelligence specialists, tactical experts all converging on a single critical objective: rescue General Garrett at all costs. The intelligence briefing was a masterpiece of complex information. Satellite imagery showed a compound located in a region that seemed designed by nature to be a defensive stronghold. Mountainous terrain, multiple approach vectors, sophisticated anti-aircraft systems. Every potential rescue route seemed to be a death trap. Most pilots would have seen an impossible mission. Maria saw a complex problem waiting to be solved. The technical challenges were formidable. The compound was protected by a multi-layered defense system that would make penetration nearly impossible. Advanced Russian-made surface-to-air missile systems created an electronic umbrella that could detect and destroy most aircraft. Insurgent groups had positioned themselves with a level of tactical sophistication that suggested professional military training. Maria began to deconstruct the problem systematically. Where others saw insurmountable obstacles, she saw a series of interconnected challenges to be addressed. Her approach was unlike traditional military thinking. She didn't just look at the immediate tactical situation, but at the entire ecosystem of the mission. Her initial proposal was revolutionary. Instead of a direct assault, she proposed a multi-phase approach that would exploit the very defense systems meant to protect the compound. It was a strategy that seemed to dance on the edge of possibility, requiring a level of precision and innovation that pushed the boundaries of conventional military thinking. The mission planning became a complex dance of technology, human skill, and strategic innovation. Maria worked with a team of specialists, electronic warfare experts, satellite reconnaissance teams, communication specialists. Each brought a piece of the puzzle, and she was the one who could see how those pieces might fit together. Her background became an unexpected asset. Her experience in the border regions, her understanding of complex cultural dynamics, her ability to read between the lines of intelligence reports, all of these became critical components of mission planning. The technological challenge was immense. They would need to create a window of opportunity so precise that it would require near-perfect execution. Jamming systems would need to be deployed, electronic countermeasures would need to create confusion, and the actual extraction would need to happen in a matter of minutes. Military leadership was divided. Some saw Maria's plan as brilliantly innovative. Others saw it as an unnecessary risk. The debate was a microcosm of the ongoing transformation. In military strategy, the tension between traditional approaches and the need for innovative thinking. General Garrett's situation grew more critical with each passing hour. Intelligence suggested that he was not just a prisoner, but a potential high-value target for a complex political manipulation. The stakes couldn't be higher. Maria's final mission brief was a masterpiece of strategic thinking. She had developed a multi-phase approach that seemed to defy conventional military wisdom. It would require her to push the boundaries of her aircraft's capabilities, to read and exploit the complex electronic warfare landscape in real time. The plan involved a series of coordinated actions. Electronic warfare specialists would create deliberate interference patterns. Satellite reconnaissance would provide real-time intelligence. And at the center of it all would be Maria, flying a mission that would require split-second decision-making and a level of skill that bordered on the impossible. As she prepared for the mission, the weight of expectation was palpable. This was more than a rescue operation. This was a moment that could define not just her career, but potentially alter the geopolitical landscape. The mission was a go. The moment Maria's fighter jet broke through the first layer of atmospheric resistance, time seemed to transform. Seconds stretched into eternities. Split-second decisions became intricate choreographies of survival. This was no longer just flying. This was a three-dimensional chess match, where the stakes were ultimately life and death. Her aircraft, an F-35 Lightning II, was more than a machine. It was an extension of her consciousness, a technological marvel that responded to her thoughts with near telepathic precision. Every system hummed with potential, every sensor an extension of her heightened awareness. The initial approach was a masterpiece of calculated risk. Sophisticated electronic warfare systems created a complex interference pattern, deliberately designed to confuse enemy tracking systems. Maria wasn't just flying. She was conducting an orchestra of technological deception. Radar systems lit up like Christmas trees. Enemy air defense networks began their deadly calculation, tracking, targeting. But Maria was already 3 moves ahead. Her understanding of electronic warfare went beyond standard protocols. She read the electronic landscape like a musician reads sheet music, finding harmonies where others heard only noise. The first wave of enemy fighters appeared on her advanced heads-up display. Russian-made Su-35 interceptors, some of the most advanced fighter jets in the world. Each was a technological predator, designed with capabilities that pushed the boundaries of aerial combat. To most pilots, they would represent an insurmountable challenge. To Maria, they were a complex problem waiting to be solved. Her initial maneuver defied conventional military doctrine. Instead of seeking immediate defensive position, she went on an aggressive approach that seemed to defy the laws of aerodynamics. The G-forces would have incapacitated a lesser pilot, but Maria had trained her body and mind to become a human-machine hybrid. Communication with her support team was a rapid-fire exchange of tactical information. Each transmission was encrypted, each piece of data analyzed in microseconds. She wasn't just receiving information, she was processing it, transforming it into actionable strategy faster than most computers could calculate. The first engagement was a ballet of destruction. Maria's aircraft seemed to dance between incoming missile trajectories, her movements so precise they appeared almost supernatural. Where other pilots would bank hard, she would slip, twist, find impossible angles of approach and evasion. Her weapon systems were more than just mechanical tools. They were extensions of her tactical thinking. Each missile launch, each electronic countermeasure was a carefully calculated decision that considered not just immediate survival, but the entire strategic landscape. The enemy fighters began to realize they were dealing with something beyond a standard opponent. Maria's approach was unpredictable, her movements defying standard engagement protocols. She wasn't just avoiding their attacks, she was using their own tactics against them, turning their sophisticated systems into vulnerabilities. One by one, enemy aircraft fell, not through brute force, but through an almost artistic deconstruction of their capabilities. Maria understood something fundamental that most pilots missed. Modern aerial combat was less about individual aircraft and more about integrated systems. Her background became an unexpected asset. The analytical skills learned in her border town, the strategic thinking developed during her military academy training, the cultural understanding from her diverse background, all of these coalesced into a unique approach to aerial combat. The technological ecosystem of her fighter jet became an extension of her consciousness. Advanced sensor systems, real-time data streams, communication networks. She processed information at a speed that seemed to defy human limitation. Each moment was a complex calculation of potential trajectories, potential threats, potential solutions. As the engagement continued, the psychological warfare became as critical as the physical combat. Maria wasn't just fighting enemy aircraft, she was dismantling their entire strategic approach. Her movements created confusion. Her tactical decisions challenged everything they understood about aerial engagement. The most sophisticated surface-to-air missile systems became ineffective. Maria's approach was so unconventional that their targeting systems couldn't maintain a lock. She was reading the electronic battlefield in real time, finding vulnerabilities that didn't exist in any tactical manual. Her squadron, monitoring the engagement, could barely believe what they were witnessing. What should have been a suicide mission had transformed into a masterclass of aerial combat. Each movement, each decision challenged everything they understood about fighter-pilot engagement. The final phase of the aerial combat was a testament to her extraordinary skills. Outnumbered and in a technically disadvantaged position, Maria transformed the entire engagement. She wasn't just surviving, she was dictating the terms of the conflict. As the last enemy aircraft fell, the silence was more profound than any explosion. Maria had done more than complete a mission. She had redefined the very understanding of aerial combat. Her communication back to base was clinical, professional. No celebration, no bravado, just a precise report of mission parameters and engagement outcomes. But those who knew her understood something profound had just occurred. General Garrett, listening to the mission reports, understood he was witnessing something historic. This wasn't just a successful mission. This was a fundamental transformation of military capabilities. The compound materialized out of the desert landscape like a mirage of potential death. Stark concrete buildings, strategic defensive positions, layers of security that seemed designed to repel entire armies. This was more than a prison. It was a fortress engineered to prevent any possibility of rescue. General Thomas Garrett had been in challenging situations throughout his extensive military career. But this was different. Captured during a delicate diplomatic mission, he found himself at the center of a complex geopolitical chess match where his life was the most critical piece. For 48 hours, he had been a prisoner, not just physically restrained, but strategically isolated. His captors were sophisticated, understanding that their value wasn't in his immediate elimination, but in the potential political leverage he represented. Each hour was a careful negotiation of survival, of maintaining critical information. Security. The compound's defensive capabilities were formidable. Multiple layers of protection created a seemingly impenetrable barrier. Advanced surveillance systems, strategically positioned guard towers, a perimeter that had been engineered to prevent any possible infiltration. Most military strategists would have deemed a rescue impossible. Maria Rodriguez saw something entirely different. Where others saw insurmountable obstacles, she saw a complex system with inherent vulnerabilities. Her approach began long before the actual rescue mission. The aerial combat had been more than just a display of fighting skills. It was a carefully orchestrated strategy to create specific conditions for the rescue. By systematically dismantling the air defense capabilities, she had created a narrow window of opportunity. The ground team was a carefully selected unit of special operations personnel. Each member was chosen not just for their physical capabilities, but for their ability to operate in high-stress, rapidly changing environments. They had been training for this specific scenario for weeks, with Maria's tactical insights integrated into every aspect of their preparation. The initial approach was a masterpiece of calculated risk. Electronic warfare systems created deliberate interference patterns that would temporarily blind the compound's surveillance capabilities. Satellite reconnaissance provided real-time intelligence, creating a dynamic map of guard positions, potential escape routes, and critical infrastructure. General Garrett's situation was precarious. His captors understood his strategic value. He wasn't just a prisoner. He was a potential tool for complex political manipulation. Every moment increased the risk of a more catastrophic scenario. Inside the compound, Garrett maintained the discipline that had defined his entire military career. Physically restrained, but mentally alert, he was gathering every possible piece of intelligence. His years of experience had prepared him for exactly this type of high-stakes situation. Maria's rescue plan was a multi-layered approach that seemed to dance on the edge of possibility. It wasn't just about breaching the compound. It was about creating a rescue scenario that would minimize potential casualties and maximize the chances of success. The ground team's approach was synchronized with Maria's aerial support. Each movement was calculated with near mathematical precision. Where traditional rescue missions might rely on overwhelming force, this operation was about surgical precision. Communication was a complex dance of encrypted channels and pre-arranged signals. Every team member understood their role with a level of clarity that bordered on telepathic communication. Maria was the conductor of this intricate orchestra, coordinating multiple elements with split-second timing. The first breach came like a thunderbolt. Precision explosive charges created specific openings, deliberately designed to create confusion, rather than wholesale destruction. The special operations team moved with a fluidity that seemed to defy human limitation, each movement calculated, each action part of a larger strategic approach. General Garrett recognized the rescue attempt. Immediately, years of military training kicked in. Despite being a prisoner, he became an active participant in his own rescue, providing critical intelligence, creating strategic distractions, understanding exactly how to support the rescue team. Maria's aerial support was critical. From high above, she provided real-time intelligence, jamming critical communication systems, creating electronic interference that would prevent any coordinated response from the compound's defenders. The ground team moved like a single organism. Each member understood their role with crystalline clarity. Entry points were precisely calculated, movement paths were predetermined, potential resistance scenarios had been meticulously planned. Garrett's extraction was a masterpiece of tactical precision. In less than 12 minutes from the initial breach, he was secured and being moved to a safe extraction point. The entire operation had been conducted with a level of efficiency that would become a case study in military rescue missions. As they moved through the compound, Maria's aerial support continued to provide critical cover. Enemy communication systems were systematically neutralized. Potential reinforcement routes were monitored and managed. It was more than a rescue. It was a comprehensive strategic operation. The final extraction was almost anticlimactic in its precision. A specially modified transport aircraft, designed for complex extraction scenarios, arrived with near-perfect timing. General Garrett was secured, the rescue team was extracted, and the entire mission had been completed with minimal casualties. Back at the command center, the mission debrief was a testament to the extraordinary nature of what had just occurred. Military leaders who had been skeptical of Maria's approach now looked at her with a mixture of respect and astonishment. The Pentagon's briefing room was a cathedral of military power. Its walls lined with historical artifacts, it spoke of countless missions, countless sacrifices. But on this day, something different was happening. The room buzzed with an energy that transcended typical military protocol. General Thomas Garrett sat at the center of the room, his presence both a testament to survival and a living embodiment of the mission's success. His eyes, which had seen decades of military conflict, now held a different kind of intensity, a recognition of something extraordinary that had just occurred. The mission debrief was unlike any in recent military history. Typically, such sessions were clinical, procedural. But this was different. Maria Rodriguez's approach had fundamentally challenged every existing understanding of military rescue operations. Intelligence analysts spent days dissecting every moment of the mission. Advanced computer simulations tried to replicate Maria's tactical decisions and consistently failed. Her approach defied traditional military doctrine. It wasn't just about overwhelming force, but about intelligent, adaptive strategy. Media interest was intense, though carefully managed. The military understood the strategic importance of how this story would be told. A female pilot of Mexican-American descent who had executed a mission many considered impossible. It was a narrative that would resonate far beyond military circles. Maria herself remained characteristically reserved. The media attention, the potential for personal recognition, meant little to her. She had done her job, nothing more, nothing less. But those who knew her understood something profound had just occurred. The technical breakdown of her mission was a masterpiece of military innovation. Her use of electronic warfare, her ability to read and manipulate complex technological systems, had created an entirely new paradigm of military engagement. Defense contractors and military strategists began to study her approach as a potential blueprint for future operations. General Garrett's testimony became crucial. During a closed-door congressional hearing, he provided a detailed account of the rescue and of Maria's capabilities. This wasn't just a successful mission, he testified. This was a fundamental reimagining of what's possible in modern military operations. Her squadron began to view her differently. Where she had once been an outsider, she was now a legend. Young pilots studied her mission reports, analyzed her tactical decisions. She had become more than an individual. She was now a benchmark of military excellence. The cultural implications were profound. As a Mexican-American woman who had risen through the ranks, Maria represented something more than her individual achievements. She became a symbol of possibility, a living testament to the changing face of military service. Her family's reaction was a mixture of pride and overwhelming emotion. Carlos Rodriguez, her father who had once dismissed her dreams, now looked at his daughter with a sense of awe. Elena, her mother, understood the deeper significance. This was more than a military achievement. This was a breakthrough for their entire community. Military leadership faced a complex challenge. How do you recognize an achievement that fundamentally challenges existing understanding? Traditional medals and commendations seemed inadequate to capture the magnitude of what Maria had accomplished. The classified briefings revealed layers of strategic complexity that would never be shared with the public. Maria's mission had not just been about rescuing a general, it had been a carefully orchestrated operation that had significant geopolitical implications. Her technological approach became a subject of intense study. Military research facilities began developing new training protocols based on her mission. Her ability to integrate human intuition with technological capabilities represented a new frontier in military strategy. Personal interviews revealed a complexity that went beyond the mission. Maria spoke about her approach not as a heroic narrative, but as a systematic problem-solving exercise. Her humility became as legendary as her achievements. The impact extended beyond military circles. Academic institutions began studying her mission as a case study in strategic thinking. Her approach represented a new model of leadership, one that valued adaptive intelligence over traditional hierarchical thinking. Her grandmother Isabella, who had always believed in her dreams, saw the deeper significance. "The sky doesn't care about the stories people tell you," she would repeat, a knowing smile acknowledging how prophetic her words had become. International military delegations began requesting detailed briefings. Maria's mission had demonstrated a new approach to military operations that transcended national boundaries. She had become, almost overnight, a global strategic asset. The psychological evaluation of her mission was equally fascinating. Military psychologists studied how she maintained such extraordinary calm under extreme pressure. Her ability to process complex information and make split-second decisions became a subject of serious academic research. Awards and commendations began to accumulate. But for Maria, these were secondary. She was already thinking about the next challenge, the next opportunity to push the boundaries of what was possible. Her personal reflection on the mission was characteristically understated. "We did our job," she would say, deflecting personal praise. But those who knew her understood that she had done so much more than just a job. The lecture hall at the United States Air Force Academy was packed. Cadets from every background sat in rapt attention, their uniforms a testament to diversity that would have been unimaginable just a generation ago. At the podium stood Maria Rodriguez, no longer just a pilot, but a living legend who had fundamentally reshaped military understanding. Her journey had become more than a personal story. It was a narrative of transformation, of breaking barriers that seemed insurmountable. The young girl from Hidalgo, who once watched planes from behind a dusty fence, had become a beacon of possibility. For an entire generation, the military had changed, and Maria was both a symptom and a catalyst of that change. Advanced training programs now emphasized the kind of adaptive thinking she had demonstrated. Her mission had become a case study, a blueprint for a new approach to military strategy that valued innovation over traditional hierarchical thinking. But Maria's impact extended far beyond military circles. She had become a global symbol of what was possible when individual excellence met systemic opportunity. Speaking engagements took her around the world, from technology conferences to educational institutions, from military academies to international policy forums. Her work now focused on bridging multiple worlds. She became a critical advisor, helping to develop next-generation military technologies that integrated human intuition with advanced artificial intelligence. Her understanding of complex systems made her invaluable in developing strategies that went beyond traditional military thinking. The technology sector became increasingly interested in her approach. Silicon Valley tech companies sought her insights on adaptive problem-solving, on creating systems that could respond to complex, rapidly changing environments. Her ability to read and manipulate technological ecosystems was now recognized as a critical skill set. Educational initiatives became a primary focus. Maria understood that her impact would be most profound through education. She developed programs that encouraged young women, particularly those from minority backgrounds, to pursue careers in STEM fields, in military service, in cutting-edge technological research. Her family's journey became a powerful narrative of generational transformation. Carlos Rodriguez, once skeptical of his daughter's dreams, now spoke proudly at community events. Elena continued her work as an educator, using her daughter's story to inspire countless young students. The military continued to evolve based on the principles she had demonstrated. New training protocols emphasized adaptive thinking, technological integration, and a more holistic approach to strategic operations. Her mission had become a turning point in military doctrine. International recognition followed. She received multiple honorary degrees, was invited to speak at global forums on leadership and innovation. But for Maria, these were secondary to the real work of creating opportunities for others. Her personal life reflected the same complexity and depth that had defined her military career. She had chosen to focus on her work, on creating systemic change, rather than pursuing traditional personal paths. Relationships for her were about shared vision, about collective growth. Technology became her primary language of change. She worked on developing adaptive AI systems that could learn and respond to complex environments. Her understanding of human-technology interaction was transforming multiple fields, from military strategy to healthcare, from educational systems to space exploration. The next generation of military leaders looked to her as more than just a role model. She was a strategic philosopher, someone who had demonstrated that the most powerful weapon was adaptive intelligence. Her approach challenged every traditional understanding of leadership and strategic thinking. Her work with emerging technologies became particularly fascinating. She was at the forefront of developing systems that could integrate human intuition with machine learning. Military and civilian applications merged in her vision. Technology not as a tool of destruction, but as a means of solving complex human challenges. Educational initiatives became her primary passion. She developed scholarship programs, mentorship systems, and technological training programs, specifically designed to create opportunities for those who had been traditionally marginalized. Her focus was on creating systemic change, not just individual success. The cultural impact was profound. For young women of color, particularly those from border communities, Maria became more than a role model. She was living proof that dreams were not confined by geographical, cultural, or systemic boundaries. Her grandmother Isabella, now in her late 80s, would often reflect on the journey. "The sky doesn't care about the stories people tell you," she would say, her eyes twinkling. With the same spirit that had inspired Maria decades ago, international policy forums sought her insights. Her understanding of complex geopolitical systems, developed through years of military service and strategic thinking, made her a unique voice in global conversations about technology, security, and human potential. The technological innovations she developed began to transform multiple sectors. Her approach to adaptive systems found applications in healthcare, in education, in space exploration. She was no longer just a military strategist. She had become a global innovation architect. Speaking to a group of young cadets, Maria would often say, "Excellence is not about proving others wrong. It's about expanding the boundaries of what's possible." Her life had become a living testament to that philosophy. Her legacy was not about individual achievement, but about creating ecosystems of opportunity. She had demonstrated that true innovation comes from breaking down barriers, not just between people, but between disciplines, between traditional ways of thinking.